Derrick Brown is back and the pads are coming on. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because on Friday, I've been telling y'all about this. I was going to do a special Friday mailbag this upcoming Friday, the day before Fan Fest. I'm going to do a special training camp mailbag. So any questions that you have about what's been going on during training camp, my thoughts on the overall roster, just anything that pertains to the Panthers, go ahead at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council. It'll be your last time to get mailbag questions in until the regular season, when the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back every single week throughout the regular season. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We have made it through 1 week of campus. Panthers have been out there with the media in attendance for 3 days, and one other day on Friday for a walkthrough. Going to give you some of my reactions to what I saw on Saturday when it was 100 degrees, back-to-back 100-degree days here in Charlotte. Hopefully it's going to cool off heading into the weekend. Going to talk about that. Derrick Brown, he's back. The pads, they're coming here on Monday. Excited about that, as we can really get to figure out what this team's going to be and who's going to be able to separate themselves and make this 53-man roster come the end of next month. But let's go back to Saturday. I was out there for training camp, and it's always fun to see how many people are there day one as far as the media corps. Then you had Thursday with Bill Belichick in town. You can see me wearing my North Carolina shirt, but the circus going on with ACC Media Days. And there was not as many people out there on Thursday. Then Friday was a walkthrough, so we weren't able to go out there at all. But then Saturday, a lot of people were taking the day off. But I was out there, boots on the ground, not saying that I'm working hard than anybody else, because we have a great little media corps here who cover the team, and they are all hardworking people. But looking back at what I saw on Saturday morning, Austin Corbett back at starting center. Dave Canales told us this about a couple of days ago, that they're going to rotate Austin and Cade Mays throughout the next couple of weeks. We'll see how long it takes for them to decide how that's going to factor. I would think that now the pad's coming on Monday, I would assume that Cade Mays is likely going to be with the ones, and that'll be his opportunity to separate himself. And then we'll have Austin Corbett an opportunity there on Tuesday, so on and so forth. And then next week, when the Browns come to town, that's when you really think the competition heats up, as they're going to be joint practices. I would assume, because it is the first preseason game, and based off what we saw last year, that will be the only time that any of the starters get reps. I'll be curious to see, will Austin and Cade rotate during that joint practice next week when Cleveland comes to town. So that's something to certainly look out for. 1v1s, I got to see those for the first time during training camp, and nice little matchup between Tetairoa McMillan, the 8th overall pick, the rookie from Arizona, and Mike Jackson, who really surprised. I don't know if he's surprised, but really impressed last year, as he was, of course, traded for late in August. The Panthers sent their 7th-round pick, Michael Baird, who was not going to make the team, to Seattle to get Mike Jackson, as Dane Jackson had a hamstring injury that was going to cost him what turned out to be the first 6 weeks of the regular season in 2024. And by the time Dane Jackson came back, Mike Jack had held down that number 2 corner spot opposite of J.C. Horn, and he was officially the starter, and he played every single game last year and played in damn near every snap last season as well, and led the team in pass breakups. And he was D'ing up the rookie on Saturday. And Tet McMillan, the first time T-Mac, whatever you want to call him, just T-Mac, so he wants to go by his nickname. But he was going against Mike Jack, had 3 different reps during 1v1s, which are catered for the offense to win, mind you. And the first one, Mike Jackson's all over him. incompletion. Second one, more of a down the field throw from Bryce Young, a little bit overthrow there, but he wasn't open on that one. And then the third time around, Mike Jack just kind of locked him up, man, kind of bodied him. T-Mac was in the ground. I mean, the refs are out there, no flag. So gonna have to see how that turns out moving forward, as JC and Mike Jack are both going to give T-Mac a nice little welcome to the NFL, which I think he got that moment on Saturday during those 1v1s. No reason to be alarmed. I remember last year inside the stadium when they had back the other Saturday, which was the same case on Saturday as the NFL Network crew was out there, where Xavier Legette was kind of struggling, and maybe a couple of those should have been PIs. There was, again, refs there, no flags, but you probably let things go a little bit more in practice than they will during the regular season. I don't think it's anything worth being that concerned about, even though that was probably one of the pre-draft things that people pointed out to. Can he separate the way that you need someone to separate at the highest level? But nice little competition, and going against Mike Jackson, JC Horn's only going to make him better and only prepare him once he gets into the regular season. Hunter Renfrow, he had some nice routes against Trevon Merrick, which I don't think is the best matchup if you're a defense trying to put Hunter Renfrow there in a slot against Merrick, who will be pretty good for the Panthers in the box. I don't know. He's played a lot of big nickel. I saw that 11v11, but I don't know if that's a matchup that you want to see in game if a guy as shifty as Hunter, who has looked like his old self. And Dave Canales talked about that after practice on Saturday. It's the same Hunter Renfrow he remembered back when he was healthy in Las Vegas. And then even when we were talking to JT Sanders, he had no idea that Hunter Renfrow had missed time last year and had no idea what he was dealing with. He still has really no understanding of what exactly Hunter went through. And he's like, yeah, nope. He seems like a guy who never missed any football to me. So that is a great sign, and absolutely what I have seen, what a lot of people who have been out there have seen so far in the 3 practices that we've been out there to cover. Hunter Renfrow is looking like the guy who could be a big factor on this team. Now, there's a lot of dudes who are going to want the ball, so we'll see how that plays out. But during 1v1s, which again, catered towards the offense, had a really nice route the second time around against Merritt to get that completion. Jalen Coker also had a couple of wins against Caleb Evans and Mello Dotson on Saturday, so he cannot be forgotten about as they went through 1v1s. 11v11s, you look at the starting trio wide receivers at this point in time: Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Tetairoa McMillan. Nothing surprising about that. Pat Jones, a second, and DJ Woodham continue to be the starters at outside linebacker, with Princely McMillan rotating in there for DJ, who's still trying to get back fully healthy. Or at least they want to monitor him in a way. They are doing the same thing with Taylor Moton, where he and Yosh Nijman, they were rotating every single play at right tackle during at least the first session of team drills 11v11. And again, Trevon Merrick was out there playing a lot in the big nickel. Derrick Brown was not involved in the first session, but he was out there the second time around. He came in, played 1 snap when they first started off, and he was out for a little bit, then came towards the latter part of the second 11v11 session. He was wearing a large knee brace on his right knee, where he, of course, had meniscus tear in surgery last year. 7v7. Only really observations I was looking at was just kind of the package. They ran a dime package defensively. So they had Mike Jackson, J.C. Horn, Shaw Smith-Wade, Trevon Merrick, and Damari Richardson out there as the secondary. Kick traversy update: Matthew Wright, he was back out there attempting kicks on the skinny post. He got the first crack at it on Wednesday, going 4 for 5, missing his second kick, but then making the final 3 on Wednesday. Ryan Fitzgerald on Thursday, we were out there, he went 4 for 5 as well, going make, miss, make. On Saturday, Matthew Wright, he stumbled a little bit, again, on a skinny post, not on the regulation post that they will kick on in the season, but he went make, miss, make, and he went 3 for 5. He is now 7 for 10 during camp on the skinny post. Ryan Fitzgerald, I would guess, would get an opportunity on Monday to separate himself potentially, but that's going to still come down to getting the actual holder, their punter, Sam Martin, out there, building that chemistry, and then that would be able to allow Carolina to really know. And I think they probably would want to take this until the Browns preseason game to figure out who's going to be the kicker. Now, the problem with the preseason is if you're not going to play the starters, which I don't think they're going to do, much like last year because of the joint practice, Jack Plummer did not necessarily show a ton aside from the final preseason game, and maybe he can pick up where he left off there, but he did not show a ton, and the offense did not show a ton to show that they could at least score points and even get in field goal range. So that may not be the best barometer for the kickers. But as far as things go, Matthew Wright, he went 3 for 5, 7 of 10 so far in his skinny post during training camp. And in red zone, did a little red zone drills. Derrick Brown, Turk Wharton were the two starting defensive tackles. Ashawn Robinson later rotated in, and Derrick played a good amount of snaps there. Andy Dalton had a really nice touchdown throw to Trevor Etienne on the first play of the second team red zone period. And then Brady Christensen came in at right tackle. So I know people have asked about what's the future for Taylor Moton. If it's not Moton, could Brady Christensen potentially be that right tackle starter in 2026 and beyond? He's at least repping there along with that left tackle. So that was one thing that stood out to me out there during red zone. And then Tommy Tremble was back out there working out after practice alongside Chuba Hubbard as he continues to work his way back from that back surgery he had back in the spring. But Derrick Brown, speaking of back, he is back in uniform. Will be in pads on Monday. Had a nice birth of his child the other day that caused him to miss the first couple of days. But he is telling people, don't doubt us in 2025. We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, bust, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Derrick Brown was at practice during training camp for the first time with the media in attendance. He had excused absences on Wednesday and Thursday as he and his wife welcomed their fourth child on Thursday. So congratulations to them. And Derrick let us know after practice that I think he's done. 4 sounds like that's enough for him and his family, but he's back out and good to see considering he's one of the pretty much the pillars of your organization at this point in time, as far as guys you want to build around him and JC Horn and looking at Bryce Young. We'll see how things play out this year offensively, but defensively, certainly JC and Derrick, the two highest paid players on the roster. Those are going to be guys that they are going to need to be healthy all season long if Carolina wants to do what a lot of you want to see them do. Of course, what I would love to see them do, have success this year, and of course, what they want to do. He was out there on Friday during walkthroughs, but first time we got to see him with our own eyes on Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, rather. And again, I told you earlier here on the show that he was not in there the first session of 11v11. At least I didn't see him. He was out there a little bit during the second time. Then he was out there for a good amount of snaps during red zone with no pads on. I'll be very curious on Monday when the pads do come on, how they handle Derrick Brown. If they're going to put him out there a lot, or if they're going to be more cautious. And that was something I asked Dave Canales after practice on Saturday. What exactly is the plan going to be for Derrick?
We're going to just kind of ramp him up each day and just kind of give him a little bit more, dose him a little bit higher. He's got to be ready to play week 1, so we'll continue to grow the capacity in practices as we go. But right off the bat, he comes back in. He's a leader, He has high expectations, particularly for the defense, and challenging the guys to play together. A style of football that I really just hope comes alive with him at the front, just leading the effort. He's a great effort player, chase player from inside the trenches. We call him stack monsters, and he really exemplifies the spirit of what we want this defense to look like. So to have him back out there was unbelievable today.
And it's going to be huge for this team if they're going to be the defense that Dave Canales just said there he wants them to be. He's going to have to be healthy. He's going to have to play. And I mean, you want to say all 17 games, of course, but you want him to play the vast majority of games, and he cannot miss 16 like he did a year ago, where the defense clearly, especially up front, was done from then on. I don't think that the Panthers give up 3,000 yards on the ground. I don't think they have the worst scoring defense in history of the NFL. Granted, yes, a 17th game. I don't think that happens if Derrick Brown plays all 17 games last season, which is kind of a duh, but still there was a lot of things that need to be fixed on that defense regardless of Derrick. And it may be in a way a blessing in disguise, because do they bring in Turk Wharton, do they spend money on Bobby Brown III? Maybe, maybe not. I would like to believe that Brant Tillis and Dan Morgan and Dave Canales all would have still been aggressive in trying to make this defense better and fill some of those holes. But they got to see firsthand what life is like without one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League, and that they did not have the requisite depth. And hell, look at any team. If the Chiefs lose Chris Jones, they're not going to be the same. If the Giants lose Dexter Lawrence, they're not going to be the same. Quentin Williams with the Jets, so on and so forth. You can't lose those type of guys and expect to maintain that level. Now, some teams like Kansas City are going to have enough depth and talent to where it's not going to be an absolute killer. But for a team like Carolina that had to lean on Shai Tuttle a ton of snaps, A'Shaun Robinson, which is not a bad thing, but asking him to do way more than needed to, Brian Bray, Deshaun Williams, and other guys who no team in the league that was going to have success would be asking to play that amount of snaps. We saw how that played out for them up front. So I love the additions this offseason of Bobby Brown III, who we have still not seen, as he is on the, is he on the PUP list right now? Yeah, no, he's on a non-football injury list, dealing with a hamstring. Hopefully he'll be back soon for Carolina with Turk Wharton. He was in there. We got to talk to him the other day. I believe it was on Thursday we talked to Turk. But those guys coming in, big moves, Carolina. Cam Jackson, who's a big man. I mean, all of these guys are just absolute monsters that play this game. But Cam Jackson, he's out there as well. Somebody to look at, the 5th rounder from Florida who can help out this defense. But having Derrick Brown back is huge. And I'm curious to see, again, Monday, today, whenever you're going to be checking this out prior to training camp, I'm very curious to see if they're going to let him go out there a lot during 11v11 and whatever they decide to do. Or he's going to be just restricted to just individual drills. And then same thing moving forward, you get to next week with the Browns, how much of a participant he's going to be there. Because I don't think he's going to play in the preseason week 1. I have a hard time believing he's going to play in the preseason week 2, especially with the joint practice in Houston. And it's your guess is good as mine at this point in time, what Dave is going to do preseason week 3. And again, we will ask and make sure what is going to happen there, what the plan's going to be, if they learned anything, I guess, from last year by not getting those guys out there. If that was the reason of the slow start, I don't know. Maybe it was, but it certainly was not a great look for the first-year head coach for this team to come out as flat as they did in that first week against New Orleans and even the second week against the Chargers, and they didn't even play in the preseason at all. So I would love to see Derrick out there against Cleveland playing a good amount of snaps, and then that can have an uptick next week against Houston, which I will not be there in Houston for the joint practices. I think that's a nice plan for him, and probably just being a little safe. Maybe you want to get him out there against Pittsburgh, because Dave did say he's got to be ready for week 1. And I think the best way to be ready for week 1 is actually playing football, especially when you did not play football at all last year. So it may benefit Derrick Brown to actually play a good amount of snaps there in that preseason finale a couple weeks from now when Pittsburgh comes to town on that Thursday night. So we'll see how that all plays out. But Derrick did have a nice message for all of us and all of you after practice as well. Looking back at last season, we know it was a disaster. And he said he didn't really want to talk about last year because that's in the past now. And he said he cursed at his TV a ton of times, and it certainly killed him to not be out there. And Joe Person of The Athletic, he asked Derrick about the Panthers being kind of a trendy pick to potentially make the playoffs, make some noise this year. I know Matt Harmon from Yahoo has talked about that. Speaking of Yahoo Fantasy, had Alex Zeitler of The Observer told me that apparently Ocho Cinco came out there and said something about Carolina the other day. It's been a team that people are looking at and thinking maybe, and I can feel the vibes. I'm going to have to let them actually win games before I'm going to buy in, because I'm just not going to do that. They're going to have to prove it to me first after what we've seen over the last couple of years. But I like what they're building. And Derrick Brown, he's telling me, he's telling you, he's telling all of us, don't doubt us.
I say don't doubt us. Don't doubt us. You got a lot of hungry people out here. So, if that's what people want to say, it is one thing. But I mean, just inside the building, everybody believes, and that's more dangerous. So, I'm excited to see what this team holds. Be able to get out here next week, get in pads, and after that, have Cleveland come to town, Houston, get through preseason, get ready to go play in September.
You say hungry. In what ways do you see that hunger manifested? Maybe in meetings or at practice?
I'll tell you what, not to have success, but to come off and finish strong at the end of the year last year, and then seeing guys turn around OTAs and come out here, and we watched that completely. And I see it in everybody's eyes, man. It's the level of effort that we put in the team. It's the level, and I got to just kind of sit back and watch in the spring. I didn't get to do much team, and I'm excited. Like I tell everybody, I'm excited to get back with the team, do my role, do my part.
Do you think how things ended at the end of last season kind of gave guys a belief, especially guys who had been here and had that success?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this: all the leaders on this team never doubt this team. Whether it was any struggles from before, any of that. We know the type of talent we got. We just got to come forward on Sunday. You know what I'm saying?
So they got the talent, he says, and you heard me ask that question at the end if the end of last season gave those guys some belief, because Derrick Brown has been here. He's never won anything. J.C. Horn's been here. He's never won anything. Vast majority of guys outside of, I guess, J.J. Jansen, who's been here for a long-ass time. Anybody who's been here 4 or 5 plus years, they have not had success in Carolina. So it'll be interesting to see if they can carry over, at least the team, the momentum, the culture that's been established. And yeah, there's a lot of questions about just what's the difference between a program and a team and all of that. Like, that program's being established. Now guys understand what Dave is asking of them. J.C. Horn talked about that. Derrick Brown talked about that. And Dave has come out and just let people understand what exactly this culture is going to be. And Dan Morgan said that last Tuesday when everybody was arriving, like, these are the Carolina Panthers going to be moving forward. So I am very curious. I'm not trying to doubt them. Just for me, let's see what happens, because they're still a team, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble. Still questions at safety. Like, what are you going to do there? Corner, I think JC and Mike Jack got something good there. Shaw Smith-Wade's been impressive so far. Not really any depth behind them. Guys that this coaching staff apparently likes, but still not a ton of depth. So we'll have to see how things play out and whether the additions that they made this offseason do pan out, because we saw a couple off seasons ago, different regime, mind you, they did not work out at all. I think that what they have right now, at least just being in it, it could be something that we laugh at down the road and mock. But right now it feels like this is an organization that has the right kind of leadership and an actual plan, which was something that was absent during the previous regime and really over the last 5+ years since Ron Rivera was fired here in Carolina. So we'll see how it all plays out. But Derrick Brown, he's back healthy, and the pads are coming on Monday. Dave Canales talked all about that. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game of friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I've had people throughout the first week of training camp ask me, how is so-and-so looking and how's this team looking heading into the season? And I tell them, okay, well, they look okay. They look fine. It's good to see them out there, but I'm really not super focused on what's happening in the first couple of days outside of where guys are lined up, what's the rotation, the kicker competition, all of that, because football's played with pads. And it's really hard to have really any grand observations or feelings about anything until the pads come on. And I know I've done a podcast the last couple of days telling you what I saw, and I've told y'all during those observations, including today's, that I saw such and such, but I wasn't really going to take too much out of what I saw until the pads came on. And the pads, well, they come on Monday, and now we can start to really try to draw some conclusions on who the Carolina Panthers are going to be here in 2025 and start to see how guys can separate themselves. And Dave Canales, he talked about that on Saturday. He was asked about this team being a physical football team and the pads coming on and wanted to see that physicality come over or carry over. And he talked about the pads being the great equalizer. Here's what he had to say.
Absolutely. That's the way football should be played. There's really only one way to do it. And I think that's what everybody loves about the sport, is the violent nature of it. And that's a part of it, and then it also tells us a lot about our players. There's another level, we call the pads the great equalizer, where a guy may not have an advantage, when we're playing in shorts, but all of a sudden, it gets dirty in there and it gets a little bit noisy in the trenches or even on the perimeter, with receivers and DBs. And sometimes guys just elevate. Sometimes guys take a step down, and so I think that gives us a lot more information about where we're headed as a team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I talked about earlier today on the show, 1v1s. Hunter Renfrow had some great routes, and he looks like the old Hunter Renfrow. I'm not expecting Hunter to all of a sudden turn into a pumpkin when the pads come on, but I do think that maybe Trevon Merrick's going to have a little bit more success if he can have the physicality of the pads on with them, and we'll see how other guys are able to transition and adjust, because it's not the same. We've seen so far Princely McMillan go out there and look pretty good. What's going to look like when he's got the pads on? Now, he had a lot to say apparently on a Twitch stream on Friday night, and I'm not hating it. I'm not hating it at all. But things I'm looking at 3 things, I suppose, heading into Monday, and with the pads coming on. Number one, talk about this early on the show. Just what I observed on Saturday between Tetairoa McMillan and Mike Jackson. Mike Jack locked him up. Now, this is a rookie. It's only day 4 it was there on Saturday of him going through training camp. I know he went through the whole offseason program and all that, but still very early. And he's going to be learning because he's got one of the best in JC Horn he's going up against, and he's got another solid player in Mike Jackson who's going up against. And that's a good thing for your rookie. But I am so curious to see, after what I witnessed there on Saturday, how does T-Mac respond? How does he handle the physicality of Mike Jackson and maybe JC Horn when he's lined up against those guys on Monday morning? That's something I am going to be keenly watching, and along with all the other receivers, because that's a group that we know who the top 3 are going to be. It's going to be T-Mac in there as well, but that's going to be a spot where those guys are going to start really special teams wise to get to see more of what they're able to do, but also just when they get opportunities with the football in their hands, running routes, what can they do in the offense? That's going to be probably the top thing I'm looking for. And I mentioned this one momentarily or a moment ago, Princely McMillan. He's wreaked havoc, if we're being honest, since things have started off. But with the whole Bryce Young situation, Dave came out and said it. And I felt like this was what I had saw as well. I was a little surprised. Well, he kind of held up there when the whole hitting Bryce's arm happened, and that could obviously be a bad situation. In game, that would have been probably horrible for Bryce. But that he held up there. But the fact that he's been winning some matchups there, going against both Moten, also going up against Yosh Nijman, Ike Ekwonu, and he talked about apparently on Friday night, whatever stream that was, that he's going to be doing that to a lot of left tackles in the league, which I would love to see it. We'll see how that all plays out. But he's wreaked havoc so far, so we'll see. Does that carry over once pads are on, and those vets actually get to lay a hand on them in a far more physical way than they have so far? And then defensively, run defense was terrible last year. We know that. Now, Bobby Brown III, I would not anticipate him being out there on Monday. I wonder what the snap count's going to be for Derrick Brown. So Turk Wharton, Cam Jackson, Shai Tuttle, some of the others in that room, Ashawn Robinson, of course. What do you look like against the run? Does the depth look better than it did a year ago? Even if some of those guys, some of these same guys that you had last season, how do they match up against that interior? That's something that I'm absolutely looking at once the pads come on Monday. How does this defense overall hold up against the run? It's not just them. It's also Trevon Merrick having to step in there, Shaw Smith-Wade, who was a solid tackler, Devontae Richardson, and then the 2 linebackers, Roseboom and Trevin Wallace. You look at their tackling grades last year, their run defense grades weren't all that great according to PFF. How do they handle things? And Roseboom wearing the green dot, how does he get everybody lined up? How does he communicate? All of that. I'm going to be looking out for on Monday when the pads come on for your Carolina Panthers. Day 5 of training camp ahead of the 2025 regular season. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because on Friday, a special Friday mailbag throughout this preseason coming out. Well, not preseason, but the training camp mailbag coming out. So at me, DM me over on Twitter, at me on Blue Sky to get those questions into me right now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding. I'll talk to y'all later on Monday afternoon and give you my observations from day 5 of training camp as Panthers put the pads on.